of all, let's talk about the process, the general process when you're working with teams using motivation. First, you want to start with the individual feedback. So it's really, if you're going to be working with a team, it's so important for each individual person to understand where they are coming from. And in doing so, they understand what their drivers are. They understand why they react to things in a particular way. And they start to get an understanding that, oh, other people may have these same types of drivers, and that's the beginning of getting them to understand their teammates better. So we always start with the individual feedback. Then we'll get into group sharing. So the first step, really, once they've gotten together as a group, is for them to start to share some of their own internal drivers with each other to foster understanding, to make sure that people are understanding that things are not necessarily personal when they're having differences of opinion, and just to get how to work better with each other. And then also another really valuable part is to look at the team as a group, to look at their scores as a group and see what are some things that might be helpful to us about our profile, about our group profile? What might be getting in our way? What are some assumptions that we make? And that will counter some of the concerns that people brought up in the Q&A around, groupthink and everybody thinking the same and everybody, working the same way. What do you lose when that's the case? What do you lose when there's not diversity within a team? You can address that by analyzing the team. And then, of course, it's all great to know how we're motivated and what we look like, but always you want to make a plan, right? What are we going to do with this information? How can we use this information to help us to work together better? So let's talk about this particular team that we have. This was a nonprofit with a 5-person leadership team. They were located in New Hampshire and had programming throughout New England. They were a mixed gender group and mixed levels of experience. There were a couple of new people who came in. There was one who was brand new, and one was about 4 years, had been there for about 4 years. There were 2 longtime employees who had been there for a very long time, were very dedicated to the organization. And then the CEO had been there for about 9 years. So he was kind of in the middle. And so how were they doing? They were doing, in some ways pretty well. They had a dynamic CEO with lots of new ideas and excitement. He was a vibrant person. He was great with the board. He was very good at representing the organization externally. He had a lot of great ideas that he would bring to the team. However, there were a few on the team who were like, geez, man, we have all these meetings where there's lots of talk and there's not much coming out of them, and I feel like even though we get together and we do a lot of talking, I leave and I just go and work on my thing because that's what I need to do. I need to focus on my area. So, and even to the point where there were some things that the group were talking about that just weren't getting done. Deadlines were being forgotten. Things were not happening the way that people wanted them to. And specifically, there was a rebranding initiative that, the marketing manager and the CEO were big proponents of. They were pumped up about it, but it just didn't take off. Like there wasn't a lot of buy-in throughout the organization for this rebranding. And even on the leadership team, there was sort of tepid response to it. And that was really frustrating to the marketing manager and to the CEO, who was really pumped up about that. So definitely some issues to deal with. So, and some of the quotes from people when we interviewed them, one was, you wouldn't believe how often he drops the ball and no one seems to call him on it. That was specifically about the CEO. They just move on to the next thing. So yeah, they were hoping for a little more follow through. And then another person, I don't know how we can talk to each other this much. We have so many meetings, but I still feel like nothing's being communicated. I'm always out of the loop. And then I put so much work into that project. Then they all completely ignored it. They just didn't seem to care. And that's from the marketing manager, who was pretty frustrated about that rebranding initiative. So definitely some issues. So The reason we got into this engagement was by starting with the CEO. He was interested in learning about, how he could make his team work better. So we decided to start with him and give him his IDI and his motivational profile, and he got feedback from his coach. And doing that, feedback when you're dealing with the IDI or motivational assessment, it really is more of a conversation. It's never like, oh, you're high on this, so you must be this way. It's more like, wow, people who have this high energy in this particular area, sometimes they feel this way, sometimes they have this experience. Has that been your situation as well? And they can confirm it, or they can say, no, that's not quite that, but it looks like this for me. So it's really a conversation, and it's really about starting to understand yourself at a deeper level, to start to understand, oh, now I get why I feel that way when I have to do this thing, or now I understand why I made that decision in my life, or why I'm drawn to this particular area. It's so helpful. And again, we're not ever trying to change the emotional drivers or the motivations. We're trying to understand them so a person can then make intelligent decisions or can understand their emotional reactions to things and maybe regulate them a little bit better, or also to understand other people's emotional reactions to things. So initially, there was a little bit of defensiveness because he came in saying, hey, there's something wrong with my team here. And then we started with him, and it was like, whoa, okay, I guess I need to look at myself. So he decided, it was eye-opening for him. And he learned about his own motivational patterns. And he suspected that those patterns could be contributing to the team's struggles. And so he was open enough in order to want to look at that for himself and be transparent about that with his team. But he also wanted the team to have that same opportunity for self-awareness, and then for them to all understand each other better and to figure out what was holding them back. Okay, so we're lucky we had a really great CEO who was really open to this type of work. So we expanded to the rest of the team, and each of the members of the team took the IDI and got their individual feedback, and had that opportunity for those same one-on-one conversations to learn more about themselves, their drivers, and to start to consider, other people's drivers as well. Okay, so that was the step one. Then we got them together as a group, and we gave them these prompts. So after they had already received their individual feedback, we asked them to think about these things, choose 2 of these prompts, and be willing to share them. So the first one, this probably doesn't surprise you about me. That's a pretty easy one. This may surprise you. This drains me, so sometimes I actively avoid it. I can sometimes over rely on this. Because of my motivations, sometimes I assume. So these are pretty deep things for people to reveal about themselves. But again, since all of them had gone through the process of understanding their internal drivers, their motivations, and since they were dedicated as a team to be working together better, they were open to doing it. So the CEO again started, and he was the first person to go forward and model transparency. So some of the examples that he came up with were his high entertaining score. So he gets energy from being in front of people and livening them up and making, situations more memorable. So he was like, yeah, probably doesn't surprise you that I get energy from making presentations and talking to crowds. And they're like, yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all. But it may surprise you that I'm not that comfortable expressing my emotions. Now, he was a dynamic presenter who used emotions in his presentations, but they weren't revealing of his own emotions necessarily. He wasn't really big on sharing, some of that internal stuff that was going on for him. So that was a bit of a surprise for people. His enduring score was low. Enduring is getting energy from persistence, tenacity, willpower. I said we're going to do this thing, so let's see it through. He was pretty low on enduring. And so he was like, sometimes I lose interest in projects once the initial startup phase has passed. And then creating. Creating is all about getting energy from new and different and trying new things and being open to, offbeat ideas and perspectives. And, he said, sometimes I get so excited about new ideas, I assume others are excited by them too. I think it's normal for everybody to get pumped up about new ideas. That's what I think, but I can see, wow, I'm a 95 compared to, other leaders who have taken this assessment that says I'm a little unusual, I'm a little different, and that's really good for me to know. So he went through and he expressed those. He shared that information about himself, and then each person on the team had the same opportunity to go about and share some of those prompts with the rest of the team, and people could ask each other questions. And just that in and of itself is a really powerful thing for a team to do, just to understand, wow, okay, I feel this way, but other people don't necessarily have the same motivation for things. Like, wow, that person really annoys me because they're really disorganized. It's not that they're trying purposely to annoy me. It's just that they don't have a large, big driver for structuring. Whereas I love structuring. I love organization, precision. I love process and procedure. That makes me feel good and in control. All right. So it really helps people to understand each other, and it can really provide team bonding for people who are working together. So that's one huge benefit of using motivational coaching with teams. Now, the next step, though, is to actually analyze the group as a whole. So what we did is we gathered all their individual scores and we looked at them to try to see, what some of the patterns were. And we asked them to look at these questions. What about this group profile potentially strengthens us? What about this group profile potentially gets us in trouble? And what assumptions do we potentially make as a group? So we put them together, we had them look at all the scores, and then we asked them to discuss. And here were some things that they came up with. So what about this strengthens us? So what we saw on their group profile was that a lot of them had a lot of energy around giving, which is getting energy from providing others with support, affection, empathy, helping others, noticing others are, in need of help. And that strengthens us. I mean, it is a nonprofit organization. Probably, part of that motivation was why they decided to join an organization such as this. They care about each other. They care about the cause. So that's a strength from their perspective. And then what else strengthens us? Well, controlling is a motivation where people get energy from being in charge, having influence on others, having a certain sense of power. Well, there's quite a spread in controlling, which can be useful because it means not everybody's trying to take charge. Sometimes when you have a team where everybody's high and controlling, you get too many cooks in the kitchen, and everybody's leading and nobody's really following. If you've got a team where there's no energy around controlling, sometimes people are sort of waiting around for somebody to jump in and take charge, right? So some variety in there is helpful. And given, that the CEO tends to be one of the people a little bit higher, that can be helpful if you are the person in charge. Doesn't mean if you have low controlling that you can't be in charge. It just means that sometimes it's a little easier. You just have to be a little more intentional if you're low controlling. He was a little higher on controlling, so it worked out well for him. Okay, so what are some things as they were looking at the group scores that potentially get us in trouble? Well, one thing that they noticed was that there were several of them, not just the CEO, who were lower on enduring. So again, enduring is about getting energy from persistence, tenacity, willpower, seeing things through. There's one outlier there, but there are several of them who, are quite low in that area, which suggests that, people are not getting a lot of energy from pushing things through to finish what they started. And then what are some assumptions that they make? So we noticed that many of them were high on independence. Independence is getting energy from freedom from exterior constraints, being self-sufficient, So they assumed, as they were working together, that people just kind of want to be left alone to do their thing. I'm going to work on my thing. They got it. They'll let me know if they need some help, but I just want to do my thing. So you can see where some of the silos were coming up because many of them were motivated in that particular direction. And then another assumption that many of them made was sticking with what we know is better. So stability is being motivated by keeping things safe and secure, knowing what's expected of you, knowing what's coming. So for those people, sticking with what they know is better. There was one particular outlier in there, but you can see where change might be a little bit of a hurdle to overcome. So those were some general observations that people made. And then when we looked at the rebranding specifically, we realized that, the creating was a little bit lower for people. So fewer people got energy from new and untested. So the rebranding launch felt premature and risky. That independence, again, more people get energy from being self-sufficient. So they assume the rebranding was not their responsibility and that the marketing manager would ask for help if she needed it. Stability, more people were motivated by keeping things stable and secure. So they wanted more time with the rebranding to process the changes and ask questions. And enduring, fewer people got energy from being persistent and tenacious. So once the rebranding didn't take off, they weren't energized to see it through. So it was very interesting to look at this one particular initiative through the lens of the IDI. And then when we looked at it again from the CEO perspective, we could see where some of his frustration was coming in, right? So with creating, he got a lot of energy from creating, but not too many other people did. So he was all about the new rebranding. Some of the others were a little more cautious. Combine that with their higher stability score and his lower stability, he was not really motivated by keeping things safe and secure, but several of them were. So again, that changed. They were like, why do we have to do this? Is this really necessary? Is this the right thing to do? They needed more time to think through this whole rebranding thing and to ask the questions and, kind of vet through the whole idea. And then you can see where the high independence promotes kind of the silos, and then the low enduring. That's where we start a lot more than we finish, right? And the president, CEO certainly contributes to that as well. So what happened next? Great, again, to know all of this information, but what are we going to do with it? So what happened is they came up with some action items. So the first thing was that they realized they tend to lack follow through. They empowered higher enduring individuals, happened to be the marketing manager, and they were encouraged to remind the team of their responsibilities. So the team now had a language to be able to talk about this and be like, oh yeah, that's right, we're low enduring. Yeah, we really need to make an effort to push through this. And the marketing manager could be like, see guys, come on, and they're not viewing her as a nag. They've empowered her to say, yes, you've got this enduring energy. Help to push us over the finish line here. The CEO and marketing director recognizes that new ideas need to be socialized thoroughly to get buy-in. And so for new initiatives and other initiatives just in general, they realize that they've got to build some time in to be able to address people's concerns and give them time to get used to the ideas. And then also, because they were all pretty high independence, they realized that we really need to intentionally make sure that we're breaking down these silos and that we are working together on projects. When we have these meetings, the question is, how can we help you? Or how is this initiative our initiative, not just yours? And some new perspectives. I realize that not everyone thinks the same way I do. I'm not taking it so personally when we disagree. And then we're giving new ideas a better shot. So some great quotes that came out of that engagement. So, in conclusion, all teams have tension, but motivational transparency can really help people explore the tension with neutrality, objectivity, and curiosity, not judgment. And that is the name of the game when you're doing motivational assessment. We're never trying to change. We're never trying to judge. We're trying to understand. And opening up about motivation